The SONA, of course, continues to dominate headlines. President Cyril Ramaphosa saying despite the country's high unemployment rate, South Africa has more people employed than before the COVID-19 pandemic. He has, however, conceded that the number of people entering the job market far outweighs the jobs that are available. The president making those remarks during his speech last night. He also added that South Africa's economy is 3 times larger than it was 30 years ago. But what does this actually all mean? Let's bring in independent economist and columnist Duma Gqubule, who joins us via our video link for more reaction this Friday morning. Great to have you on the program, sir. Thanks as always for making time. The president already being accused of being a bit of a Picasso yesterday, giving these broad strokes while we lack detail. For one, he spoke of 1.7 million job and livelihood opportunities. What does that mean?
He's referring to the presidential employment stimulus and the jobs that were created during since the start of the pandemic. But, for me, the President Ramaphosa never fails to disappoint 60 million South Africans, He's been doing that ever since he became president. This is an election year. He's supposed to give a plan as to how he's going to address the 3 most important issues now. It's GDP growth, jobs, and Eskom. Instead, he went on a long retrospective analysis of the past 30 years, which tortured the statistics and added, lies about black ownership in mines and black ownership in land. And I don't understand what was the point of it. It was a waste of time. For almost 2 hours, he never addressed these 3 priorities. Now, the first priority is GDP growth. President Ramaphosa has got the worst track record of any president since 1994 in terms of GDP growth. We had 2.7% under Mandela, 4% under Mbeki. We had 1.9% under Duma, and 0.5% in the 6 wasted years of his presidency. If you cut out his excuse, COVID, we've had 1.1% GDP growth. If we cut out 2 years of COVID, we have 1.1% GDP growth per year. And the emerging and developing economies, 155 countries, have had 4.1% average growth over the same period. So what I'm trying to say is that our economy was collapsing before the pandemic, and our recovery has been one of the worst since one of the worst in the world. The second issue is jobs. There are 6.7 million unemployed, 6.8 million unemployed Tinswalos. There are 8.7 million Tinswalos who are not in employment, education, or training. There are also the number of unemployed Tinswalos has increased by 873,000 since he became the president. There was nothing in the speech that is going to address that reality of the Tinswalos that he was talking about. The third issue is Eskom. Now, let us just unpack what has happened since 2007. If you unpack the energy shared since 2007 per presidency, under Cyril Ramaphosa, it is 95% of the energy shared since 2007 was shared under his presidency. Secondly, in July 2022, he announced a new energy plan, and then last year he announced the electricity minister. It is 19 months after the new energy plan, and last year we had more load shedding energy shared than in the previous 16 years from 2007 combined.
Right.
And so there was nothing to give South Africans hope. Instead, we wake up to stage 4 load shedding. So on all these 3 metrics, GDP growth, jobs, and Eskom, this is a person who really does not want to become the president of the country in the next president of the country. It sounds to me like he has given up, he has lost the fight. Why on earth would someone spend looking past the last 30 years, and the figures on GDP growth, they were just he said the economy has increased by 3 times. Now, if you account for inflation and the growth of the population, our economy GDP per capita has increased by 22% from 1994 to 2022. But China, 783%. Vietnam, 337%. Ethiopia, 315%. India, 285%. Poland, 215%. Emerging markets have done very well over the past 3 decades overall. And why average living standards in South Africa in 2023 were lower than they were in 2007.
Sure.
They are forecast to decline for another 3 years. By the end of 2026, we will have had 19 years of declining average living standards. We can't continue like this, Ayanda. I just don't understand.
Yeah. Duma Gqubule is certainly pulling no punches this Friday morning. How do we square that, though, with something else he mentioned around this? He said, we've laid the foundation for growth through far-reaching economic reforms. There's another buzzword. An ambitious investment drive and an infrastructure program that is starting to yield results. Sure, yesterday was laced with a lot of spin. Few people will be surprised by that. But are you at least optimistic that there is some kind of foundation?
Oh, no, I'm not optimistic. First of all, how can you be laying the ground after 30 years? You've had 30 years to lay the ground. Secondly, all the stats that you repeat about investment are fake news. Let me just give you an example. The investment as a percentage of GDP has declined from 16% to 14% under his presidency. There has been a collapse of public investment since 2015 of 38%. So the government in 2019 announced their 100 billion rand infrastructure fund. And guess what happened? Every year, there was an allocation to the fund that was cancelled. In the 2023 budget, there was no allocation to the fund. So basically, the lived reality of millions of South Africans is that the government has withdrawn from public investment and the whole country is falling apart. Communities throughout the country, everything is falling apart because of this irrational decision to cut public investment. Public investment creates the resources to pay for itself. Why can't the government and the president understand economics 101? There is no logic in cutting public investment. Yeah.
All right. Duma Gqubule, something tells me you were not impressed by yesterday's speech, but we'll leave it there for now. We appreciate your weighing in on the AM report. Duma Gqubule, independent economist and columnist.